Digi-Egg cards, the EX2 Digimon is still the main go-to just to give us the draw power that we need to find and gather pieces so that we can build our stack optimally as possible. Let's now talk about our rookies. The EX2 Gallantmon is still one of the best searchers for the deck, being able to grab you anything within the line, as well as Timecodes, which is really important to your core strategy because you want to set it up, and with its inherited effect to pop 3000 DP or less while you're attacking is also great to remove Floodgate rookies. As for the BT17 Gallantmon, which I'm running 2 copies of, does the same thing to get rid of Floodgate rookies. By playing Timecodes or Gallantmon, if nothing's deleted, you get to gain the memory back, making it very efficient so that you can play your Tamers for cheap. And with its inherent effect of bumping your DP based deletion effects by another 2000 is really great to help get rid of bigger bodies as you digivolve up your line. Speaking of Gallantmon, we are anticipating to get the full power support in 2.5 with a whole brand new line, which a lot of the cards can be included into this deck as well, which I will be playing the new Gallantmon instead of this one. So definitely stay tuned, subscribe, turn on that notification bell to see for more updates as we continue to cover more Gallantmon content on this channel. I also included 1 copy of the Rush Gallantmon from EX4, and it's very easy to meet the requirement of having both players to have 20 cards or more in the trash because we delete a lot of things, we mill our own deck as well at the same time, and then when you ever play this card out, you can gain Rush, and since the Rush effect is given to the entire stack, you can evil up as a really good comeback play at times. And then for the brand new edition of the Digimon X-Antibody from EX8, which you want to maximize at 4 copies of because it helps you further search with your consistency. Whenever you digivolve or even play it, you want to be able to grab your stack pieces, anything with Gallantmon, Gallantmon. You can even grab X-Antibody, which gives you bonus effects to your secondary abilities of all your other X line. And being able to gain a memory back with its inherent effect is a very nice bonus, especially when we remove the opponent's Digimon during our turn. That's it for the level 3s. Now let's talk about the level 4s. I'm running 2 copies of the BT12 Gallantmon, which lets us play a Timecodes for free if we don't have one on the board. Inherent effect of giving extra DP is always nice, so then we can ensure that we swing over the opponent's bodies if we need to. I'm also running 2 copies of the BT17 Gallantmon, which helps me delete the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less when we get into it. If not, we gain 3000 DP for the turn, and with its inheritable, also helping us bump up our DP based deletion effects by 2000 as long as we have 0 or fewer memory during all turns too. I'm also running 1 copy of the ST7 Gallantmon just for the inheritable to gain a memory back. We know that Gallantmon is really good at taking down the opponent's Digimon during our turn, and gaining that advantage back is always very nice, which I always consider maybe even running 2. And then for the new Gallantmon X-Antibody, which I'm running a definite 4 of. It's our other draw power source of the deck aside from Digimon that we want to get into in the early stages. When we digivolve into it, we get to draw 1 and trash 1 by setting up cards in there, and as well as try to find what we need. And then if you have a Gallantmon or X-Antibody when you digivolve into it, it gives you that floating capability of playing a Gallantmon back for an entire turn when it's deleted. And being able to do that helps you continue to search and also keep a body on the board so that you can reclimb all over again whenever you need to, which is fantastic. And with its inherent effect, just like all the other cards in our line to gain the memory back, that's definitely what we want to build into our stack as much as possible as well. That's it for level 4s. Now let's talk about level 5s. And to begin with, I'm playing 2 copies of the EX3 War Gallantmon, which is really intended to help me play Timecodes for free. Different to the Gallantmon from BT12, when you digivolve into it, both players mill the top 3 cards, and as long as either player have 5 or more cards in their trash afterwards, you can play a Gallantmon or Timecodes from hand or trash. You guys know setting up Timecodes is really important for the deck, especially when it comes to the EX2 one, so you can enable your blitz combos and attack when you digivolve as you go into it, even when you pass the memory gauge to your opponent's side. And we'll talk about it more later when we get into it, as well as showcase you guys in the combos. For the other War Gallantmon, I'm playing also 2 copies of the BT12 one, being able to remove additional smaller bodies, and if not, we can digivolve into Gallantmon for reduced cost of 1 is always really clutch. And with its inherent effect to potentially gain 2 memory back after attacking, as long as your opponent doesn't have a Digimon left on the board, by keeping your Gallantmon sticky, you can continue to develop a lot of value off of this 1 card alone, which is really nice. As we move on, I'm also running 1 copy of the BT17 War Gallantmon. Being able to delete stuff with 6000 DP or less, or gaining sec +1 is really nice, but a lot of the main reason why I'm running it is for the inheritable of potentially unsuspending, and that is also all turns whenever opponent's Digimon is deleted. On the offensive side of things, it allows us to make extra attacks to close out games even faster, and on the defensive side of things, because I play the BT17 Gallantmon and potentially getting blocker can help us stop the opponent's attacks multiple times during their turn too. To wrap up for the rest of the level 5s, of course, gotta include the War Gallantmon X-Antibody from the EX8 set, and I'm running 3 copies of it. The archetype now has additional protection in the form of being bounced back to the hand or being bottom decked. You also get to delete your opponent's Digimon with 10,000 DP or less if you have War Gallantmon or X-Antibody underneath underneath it. And thanks to the inheritables of BT17 Gil and Gallantmon, you can easily bump it up to 12 or even 14,000, which gets rid of most level 6s in the game. And my favorite part of it is the inheritable to gain Sec +1 with no conditions, which is the damage that the deck really needs to help it close out games even faster than it used to. And now let's talk about our level 6s, where I'm running 3 copies of the BT17 Gallantmon, being able to remove a 8k body on the board. If you don't, you gain 3000 DP and blocker until the end of the opponent's turn. It's also not once per turn because you can get to use it when you Digivolve and when you attack with this guy. The secondary effect of being completely immune during your turn as long as you have 0 or fewer memory is the perfect synergy that Gallantmon needs, because you tend to play on the opponent's memory side a lot, and with that kind of protection you can play around aces, security bombs, which is super handy when you make your attacks. I also run 1 copy of the BT13 Gallantmon. In the later stages of the game you can reduce its play cost, so you can almost play for very cheap, and itself has rush. Whether you play it, Digivolve, or attack with it not once per turn, you pop opponent's Digimon with 6k or less. If not, you pop a 13k or higher, which is really good at removing additional bodies. And now let's talk about the all-new boss monster of this deck, which brought it back to life, Gallantmon X-Antibody from EX8. It can buff itself up with DP and reduces the opponents at the same time by 4,000, and that's not even once per turn when you Digivolve, when you attack with it. And it has that secondary effect. When you Digivolve into it, you delete your opponent's Digimon with 10k or lower. If nothing's deleted, you get to trash your opponent's security and unsuspend. This one is once per turn, but that's more than enough for you to help close out the games. Last but not least, it also has a protection effect, but different to the BT17 Gallantmon, it has all turns, only immunity against the opponent's Digimon effect specifically. And not to mention, you have to be at 0 or less memory too. This card itself is a giant beat stick that you want to get into as soon as possible because it can do it all. Delete your opponent's stuff, remove things, and take down security quickly to help you win your games. And now to round off for all of our Digimon and our one and only level 7, I'm running 1 copy of Crimson Mode Ace. Now I know many of you guys are thinking you should be running 2 copies of this card. Now hear me out. Initially I did, and when I play tested, it felt like I was breaking quite a bit because the deck build was quite top and heavy. Despite this being our one and only ace threat at the moment for the deck, I always felt like it was just of a card that helps you win more, which you don't necessarily need to because Gallantmon X itself does it all already. Of course, when you get into it, you can delete almost anything from the game, and especially when you attack with it, it feels great as you burn down your opponent's security, as it's almost like an instant win button. Now let's talk about Tamers, where we got the EX2 Takado, which I'm running 3 copies of. Now I know you guys are also thinking you should be running 4 copies of this card, but let me explain into our Tamers later on. I admit that this is really important. You want to get into it as soon as possible because it gives you all the blitz attacking combos that you can pull off. Not only that, it helps you gain memory back. But then I'm also playing the other 2 copies of BT17 Takado to gain a memory in the beginning of the main phase, as long as we have a Gil or Gallantmon as well. Being able to biomerge at the end of the turn is great because we get to forgo Digivolution requirements and not have to pay memory too. This is where both Takados synergize really greatly together, and you want to have them both set up so they can go for these crazy combos. But I have to save space for an extra Tamer because I'm actually personally playing 2 copies of Cool Boy, because I really just want to keep up my searching consistency up as high as possible in the early stages to grab anything that I need that's X-Antibody, the option itself as well, which I'm running Proto form. And the fact that I get to gain a memory and draw an additional card when I Digivolve into my X-Antibody forms really helps find my pieces for me to set up my optimal stack. So that's it for the Tamers, and now let's talk about options. Since we're running Cool Boy, I'm running 2 copies of Proto form. I personally prefer Proto form because it helps me reduce the Digivolution cost as I climb up. The recursion is really crucial because if you lose your stack, you can at least grab a specific piece you need back, so then you can enable yourself to once again Digivolve all the way back up if you need to for any missing things. The fact that it recovers back to the security allows you to reuse it as long as your opponent checks into it again is always something I really value. For those who don't have access to Proto form, don't worry, I'll talk about the substitute, which will be the BT9 regular X-Antibody, which will go more in depth on how you can optimally use it and build it for Gallantmon. And then for the rest of the options, for the standard staples, I'm running 4 copies of Offense Training to help me search, and as well as 1 copy of Red Scramble. Alright, tech choices and other cards you guys can also be including in this deck. I was originally running the BT12 Digimon egg instead, just to help bump up my DP based deletion effects by another 1,000. I realized that I have a lot of searching efficiency when it comes to the Cool Boys, the Gilmons, and the trainings I'm playing already, but at the end of the day, I think draw power is just genuinely better anyways to help you consistently get there into your game plan. I've also considered adding in the Starter Deck 7 Gilmon, which can help you warp into a Gallantmon right away. You can even synergize that with Scramble or even training to further reduce the Digivolution cost, which is fantastic. And like I mentioned earlier, draw power is always nice, which is why its inheritable comes in handy with it as well. I also considered running the black Gallantmon from EX4, and I would easily substitute it away for the BT17 Gallantmon just because I think this just has a much better effect to help you mill, help you search and grab pieces, and its recursion is just fantastic, just like the whole reason why we run Protoform. But there's only one downside, it's black Gallantmon, and that means the Gallantmon X-Antibody can't Digivolve on top of it, which creates a bit of clunkiness, which I don't like when playing the deck. The fact that it mills 2 when you Digivolve into it synergizes very well to help set up your EX3 War Gallantmon to have 5 cards in trash so that you can play Tokado or Gilmon as well. At the end of the day, if you really want to run this card, I would suggest no more than 2 copies, and if you do, you might even have to consider bumping down your Gallantmon X's so then you reduce the amount of clunkiness that might happen. Another level 6 to strongly consider is certainly the medieval Gallantmon that came out together from the EX8 set along with Gallantmon X. This card alone is a really strong staple. You can just play it by itself, suspend down your opponent's Digimon, swing over it, delete it as well. And you always have the option to Digivolve up into the line if you need to. The other older Gallantmon I considered playing as a one-of is the BT12 one, just because you can still raid over bodies, you can delete your opponent's 6000 DP or less, otherwise trash their security as you continue to pressure, which really gives you the early game damage. Now the reason why I only would consider running it right now is because it's the only source of the raid, but with 2.5 coming in and the new Tokado, we no longer need that because the Tokado will give all of our other Gallantmons raid instead. That's why I would only include this card for this particular format until that set comes out. If you want to have a little bit more counter against your opponent's attacks aside from just Crimson Mode Ace, the Digimon Ace, which came out from LLM set, was also really good. There's a lot of times you might just stand as a War Gallantmon or War Gall X passing to your opponent. If they attack into you, you can go into this. Itself having that floating capability to play back a Gilmon and tuck it underneath prevents you having to pay the Ace Overflow once, which is really nice, and then giving the Inheritable to bump up any of your DP based deletion effects by another 5,000 can really help you remove even bigger bodies. If you ever want to have a memory setter, the BT12 Tokado would be the one to go to, giving you the same warping capability just like the BT17 one, but instead this one you have to pay the full cost to Digivolve into Gallantmon because you can use it anytime during your main. But the payoff is that you gain extra 2000 DP for the turn as well. Now let's talk about the original BT9 X-Antibody instead of Protoform on how you can incorporate it. Normally there's a lot of decks out there that really require Protoform, but Gallantmon is one of the ones that don't necessarily need to and can really capitalize off this original X-Antibody. And the whole reason is because you tend to Digivolve up, and with the Blitz Tokado you can make attacks, and then while you're attacking you can Digivolve. There are times you can actually go for really aggressive plays to climb straight from your 4 to your 5 and then to your 6 in one single turn. Surely you pass quite a bit of memory to your opponent's side, but with all the memory gaining effects back to your turn, it actually really pays off. And all of it really just comes down on the personal playstyle that you prefer on how you pilot the deck. And then to round up for all the tech choices, there's Red Memory Boost, which I've always considered adding 1 or 2 copies back in because it helps me search a little bit deeper to find the specific pieces that I need. Alright, let's talk about how to play the Gallantmon X deck for EX8, and let's begin with the mulligan hand in terms of what cards you want to see at the very beginning. Of course, it is a red base stack building deck, so you want to see your pieces that can climb you up from 3, 4, 5s, and 6s, which is really basic. You sometimes actually want to hard play your Gilmon if your opponent gives you a lot of memory to start off with. That way you can go into Gil X and build your first stack outside, and then you can cycle as quickly as possible. Most of the Gilmons that we play in the deck searches, so we want to use maximum efficiency when it comes to that. Offense training, cool boy to find the rest of it, and then 4, 5s, 6s, and Tokados that can play out as you move along. So there are a lot of different ways for you to build your stack when it comes to red decks, and here are some of the optimal and ideal ways on how you want to climb up as you go. Starting with our very first combo, all you need is a Gilmon and Raising and a offensive training to go straight into a level 5. We're going to push out the Gilmon and we're going to Digivolve into Gil X for 0 cost. Gil X is going to search and grab us pieces that we need, and afterwards we're going to use the training to Digivolve into Gallantmon for free. With that, Gallantmon is going to delete an opponent's Digimon. If it doesn't delete, that's fine. You get to gain extra 3000 DP for the turn as well. But assuming you get to delete, this is where Gilmon X will gain you a memory back. It's really important to have this setup of offensive training because we're going to try to get a Tokado out with the EX3 War Gallantmon. So the next step is to Digivolve into Gallantmon X. We get to draw one and trash one. Really important that you want to trash a card to make sure that you can reach the threshold of 5 cards in trash. At least for yourself. If your opponent has that threshold, then this is really good because then you get to play that Tokado back afterwards by Digivolving into War Gall for 3. Now you're gonna mill the top 3 cards of your deck. Let's just say you mill these 3 cards. It doesn't really matter what it is. Like I mentioned, you wanna have 5 cards in trash, and this is where you get to have your option to play a Takado. If there's no Takado and you wanna play a Gallantmon instead from the trash as well, this works that way too. So that's how you wanna set it up like that. Pass the turn to your opponent's side with 1 memory. Also keeping in mind of that your Gallantmon X will give you the floating capability to play out another Gallantmon in its name back if it ever would be deleted. Now let's talk about combo number 2 as a follow-up from the previous combo. Generally, your opponent may not try to remove you, and if they can't, this is how your setup is going to next look like. Assuming they pass you to 1 memory once again, of course you want to hatch and cycle through, build your second stack if you have one and have it ready to go. But predominantly, we want to think about going into the Wargrowl X. We're going to Digivolve for 1 cost, and then we're going to gain another layer of protection, an extra 3000 DP until the end of the opponent's turn. This stack cannot be returned to the hand or deck, and then since we have Wargrowlmon underneath, we can delete something with at least 10k or lower. Since we're at 0 memory, Growlmon is going to increase it to 12k so that we can delete potentially quite a bit of megas in the current game. After deleting, we're going to gain 1 memory for Growl X and gain another memory for Gale X. You want to suspend Takado to also gain another memory here, putting you the 3 without needing a memory setter, which is insane. Now we're going to Digivolve for 3 into the BT17 Gallantmon. Using its when Digivolving and when attacking effect that's not once returned, pop something. If we don't pop anything, gain extra 3000 DP and blocker. Keep in mind, popping an 8k here is going to go all the way up to a 10k at least, thanks to Growlmon Inheritable since we're at 0 memory. And the reason why you want to always make sure that you're at 0 memory is because you gain the immunity. This is where it perfectly comes in, where you can go ahead and swing with the Gallantmon, activate its when attacking effect once again, pop something. If nothing's popped, extra 3k and blocker with multiple instances like that. You just rack up a lot of additional DP power. Gallantmon to pop something, Digimon to also draw a card. Assuming you didn't pop anything, this is at least 17k with 2 checks into your opponent's security. Afterwards, all you want to do is end the turn by Digivolving for 1 into Gallantmon X, using its when Digivolving effect to DP reduce your opponent and gain another 4k, making it 21. Then use its second when Digivolving effect to delete something that is 10k or lower. You probably have DP reduce it by 4k, and thanks to the Growlmon, once again, you get to bump it up to 12k instead, removing a really big body that's at least 16k in total with the DP reduction. If nothing's deleted, you get to unsuspend and trash your opponent's security. After it unsuspends, you got 2 choices. You can choose attack again because Takado gives it blitz. You get to minus something by another 4k since it's not once returned. It's both when Digivolving and when attacking. You also bump it up by another 4k, making it 25 in total. Otherwise, you can just leave it standing as a blocker. Depending on the matchup and depending what you need in the situation, you could have just either cleared all your opponent's security in 1 single go, or you have this really strong blocker on the board that is almost untouchable since it's unaffected by your opponent's Digimon effects as well. For the third and final combo, I want to show you guys the value of Cool Boy and offense training, and I'm going to show you guys how to god stack your opponents to OTK in this single turn. And this is all the setup you're going to be needing, including with at least 20 cards in trash, which is going to be important because we're going to go for Crimson mode for game. So we're going to push out with Gallantmon. It doesn't matter what it is, but of course, we're going to Digivolve into Gallantmon X. Always remember to suspend and use Cool Boy first to gain a memory and draw additional card. Gallantmon X is going to search. In this case, let's say we find ourselves a proto form, or you have it already in your hand, is always ideal. Now we're going to use offense training to Digivolve into Growlmon BT12, which lets us play a Takado if we don't have a Takado in play. We're going to Digivolve into Growl X, doing the same thing as before, draw 1 and trash 1, gaining the floating capability at the same time. Next, we're going to Digivolve into Wargrowl for the 3 cost. We want to make sure that the opponent has something that we can delete that's at least 4k, and thanks to the Gallantmon, we get to increase it by 2k, so we can pop something that's 6k. After popping something, Growl X is going to gain 1, Gale X is also going to gain 1. Suspend Takado to gain another memory back as well. This is where I'm going to use Proto Form to help me Digivolve Wargrowl into Wargrowl X for 0. Wargrowl X is going to do its thing again, giving the protection, extra 3000 DP, and popping another thing with at least 10k. Since our memory gauge is not at 0 at the moment, we're not going to be able to pop 12k, but that's totally fine. As we clear our opponent's board, we're going to continue to attack and delete their things over and over again as we climb up, because now we're going to Digivolve into Gallantmon here, deleting something again. If we don't delete, we gain extra 3k, and this is where we're going to swing for the similar combo as before. This is essentially 19k into security 2 checks, which is incredibly safe. And remember, Gallant has immunity because you have 0 or fewer memory, and it's still your turn. You want to make sure that you cleared your opponent's board entirely at this point, because at the end of attack, Wargrowl is going to gain you the 2 memory back. And since your opponent has nothing on the board and you wiped out everything, you're going to pay 1 to Digivolve into Gallant X once again. Gallant X is going to do its thing as when Digivolving, but most importantly, you want to be able to unsuspend and trash a security. That should set your opponent down to 2 security left, and in the final stages, you can either choose to attack for 2 checks again, but since the goal is to try to win exactly in this turn, like I mentioned, if there's 20 cards in total and both players trash, Digivolve into Crimson mode for 4 costs, and since the Kato gives you Blitz, get the swing, trash 2 of your opponent's security, putting them to 0, and this goes for game. The Crimson Saber playmat and sleeves are now available on the AVAULT store along with the Chaos Saber mat, where I have a 2-player version and sleeves which are exclusive during this limited time release only. So make sure to grab yours right away, and thank you guys so much for the support. As always, you guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are, and see you in the next video. And this is AVAULT signing out.